Barbara Tarbuck. You might recognize Barbara Tarbuck from her long, iconic run as Lady Jane Jacks on General Hospital, or her chilling role in American Horror Story. She was a brilliant, expressive actress who spent her life communicating complex emotions. But her final act was stolen by one of the most terrifying, rare, and incurable diseases known to modern medicine: Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD. It's a fatal degenerative brain disorder caused by misfolded proteins called prions. Basically, these rogue proteins start a chain reaction, destroying healthy brain cells and literally turning the brain tissue into a sponge-like porous mess. And the absolute worst part? There is no cure, no treatment, and it moves with terrifying, unstoppable speed. CJD usually starts with subtle, easily dismissed changes: a little memory loss, sudden anxiety, or maybe some uncharacteristic clumsiness. But within a matter of months, it accelerates into a waking nightmare. Tarbuck's brain was rapidly and systematically deteriorating. The disease causes severe, rapidly progressive dementia, violently stripping away a person's memories, their personality, and their ability to speak or understand language. As the physical brain damage spreads, patients suffer from myoclonus, violent involuntary muscle jerks, tremors, and painful spasms. Imagine being trapped inside a body that is constantly twitching and failing, while your mind is simultaneously dissolving into confusion, fear, and darkness. In her final days, Tarbuck was completely bedridden in her Los Angeles home, entirely dependent on her daughter and family for basic survival. The final stages of CJD are incredibly brutal to witness. Patients lose all motor control, they often become completely mute, and they are entirely unresponsive to the world around them before finally slipping into a deep coma. On December 26, 2016, right in the middle of the Christmas season, she passed away at the age of 74. Bob Marley. Bob Marley is a global icon of peace, love, and reggae music. He seemed larger than life, a spiritual force of nature. But the disease that killed him is a terrifying reminder that cancer doesn't care who you are or what you represent. It all started in the mid-1970s with what he thought was just a minor soccer injury, a dark, painful lesion under the nail of his right big toe that simply refused to heal. When doctors finally biopsied the tissue, they found acral lentiginous melanoma. It's an incredibly rare and highly aggressive form of skin cancer that often strikes people with darker skin, hiding in places you wouldn't normally check, like the soles of your feet or under your nails. The doctors told him the only way to stop it from spreading was to amputate the toe entirely. Marley refused the amputation.
No.
Citing his strict Rastafarian beliefs about not cutting the flesh and his practical need to perform and dance on stage, he opted to just have the cancerous tissue in the nail bed removed. It was a fatal, tragic mistake. By 1980, the melanoma had silently and aggressively spread through his bloodstream, metastasizing deep into his lungs and his brain. Desperate for a cure, he spent 8 agonizing months in a clinic in Germany undergoing highly controversial alternative treatments, enduring strict diets and painful injections. But the cancer just kept growing, consuming him from the inside. By May 1981, Marley knew his body was failing and he was dying. He chartered a private flight to return to Jamaica so he could spend his final days at home. But he never made it back to the island. During the flight from Europe, his vitals completely crashed. The tumors ravaging his brain and lungs were shutting down his basic bodily functions. He became extremely weak, struggling violently for every single breath, slipping in and out of consciousness as his organs failed. The situation was so critical that the pilots had to make an emergency diversion and land in Miami. He was rushed to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, but the cancer was everywhere. There was nothing left to do but wait. On May 11, 1981, at just 36 years old, his body finally gave out. Harold Ramis. If you've ever laughed at Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, or Caddyshack, you have Harold Ramis to thank. He was one of the greatest comedy minds of his generation, a guy who basically defined the sense of humor for an entire decade of cinema. But the way he died was anything but funny. It was a slow, agonizing betrayal by his own body. In May 2010, Ramus contracted what seemed like a routine infection. But that infection triggered a terrifying and incredibly rare condition called autoimmune inflammatory vasculitis. Basically, his immune system went completely rogue. Instead of fighting off viruses, it started attacking his own blood vessels. Imagine the walls of your arteries, veins, and capillaries becoming thick, inflamed, and narrow, slowly choking off the vital blood supply to your organs and muscles. The physical toll was immediate, shocking, and devastating.
Ouch!
Ramus, a guy who was always active on movie sets, completely lost the ability to walk. The nerve and muscle damage was so severe that he had to go through intense, grueling physical therapy just to learn how to put one foot in front of the other again. For a brief period, it looked like he might actually beat it. He was fighting hard. But in late 2011, the disease came back with an absolute vengeance. He suffered a massive relapse, and from that point on, he never fully recovered. For the next 3 years, he was trapped in a relentless cycle of chronic pain, extreme fatigue, and progressive neurological problems. The disease was systematically shutting down his body from the inside out, starving his tissues of oxygen. By February 2014, the systemic complications were just too much for his body to handle. He was confined to his home in the North Shore suburbs of Chicago, surrounded by his wife Erica and his family. In his final hours, his breathing became shallow and labored as his heart struggled to pump blood through his severely damaged vascular system. His organs, starved of blood flow for years, finally began to fail. On February 24th at 12:53 a.m., the man who brought so much joy and laughter to the world passed away at the age of 69.